sunny day again. I actually just want to acknowledge, I hope nobody here has family or has property in Florida. And just be thinking about them today because they're in for some nasty times, aside, along with the people who are in North Carolina and across the U.S. We've been scared. Actually, I know that we did have a hurricane here in 1954. Everybody here remember? So I don't know what happened, how bad it was, but I do know that we did have a hurricane here. So perhaps you can relate a little bit. But anyways, welcome today to our Empowered Senior Speaker Series. My name is Maria Durdan. I'm a real estate broker here in Burlington. I'm with Keller Williams Edge Realty. Actually, I'm just going to put my slide. There I am. We started these sessions last June, like a year ago June, and it came not out of necessity, but a tremendous opportunity to be able to provide some education, training, not training, just education, empowerment, information, and connections to people in the community who specialize in work with older adults. So I'm a broker. I'm also what's called a Lifestyle 55 Master, which means I've got some additional education, training, and experience working with older adults later in life moves and estate sales, and also what's called a senior real estate specialist. It's important for me, I guess what I've noticed along my career is that when working with older adults, there is a lack of information, and not that there's a lack of information out there, but there's a lack of access to reliable, timely information. And that's the purpose here, to be able to bring our attendees information that you can count on to be truthful, and then also you have connections to other people who can help to provide any kinds of services that you need. Oops. That brings me to our educational partners. I just want to acknowledge and thank them. It's without them, these sessions would be pretty difficult to execute. And by way of introduction, this time I'm just going to go at it a little bit differently. I usually introduce them kind of one by one, but today I'm going to just give them to you maybe in sort of an overview of what they do. So first off, we have Neela White. Neela's with Building Advisory Group. I always have trouble remembering the name, Raymond James. She's been in the business quite a long time. She's got lots of experience as a wealth advisor, wealth manager, but along with that, she's got several sort of senior associated designations. She's also a certified professional consultant on aging, tons more. My list is not legible here, but she's been in the business and has lots of, it's not just the wealth advising that she can help you with. She also presented for us last July on the silent worry of aging, and it was really more around how you financially plan for growing old, and with her own experiences with her parents and so the true cost of aging and what she experienced in having to provide the care that they needed. So in the next kind of tier of people that we've got here are people who help with healthcare. So on this side, we have Elizabeth Rusin Thibodeau. She's with a new group of people who are part of Bayshore Home Health Care, but it's called the Burlington Neighborhood Health Team. They're a nurse-led healthcare provider. So Elizabeth is their lead nurse here in Burlington. We also have Jerry Sia. He's actually standing there, Quality Care. Burlington, also Home Care Company, local Burlington group, and Hearing Well Matters. So Meredith Joachim here was representing them, and their name speaks for themselves, anything to do with hearing, and what they say is hearing well does matter. Kind of next tier of people that we've got here are people who are involved in transitions. So we've got you well positioned financially. If you need any home care, you've got the people here that you can turn to. But if the time comes that there is sometimes some sort of transition in your life, we've got you covered there as well. So Jeanette Bach, Fluid Senior Transitions, she's looking after people and helping people to explore and make sure that they're protected in all the things that they need, moving from one to another, or not even moving, staying put, but just a change in their lives. in your life. Irene is Yoba. She's with 360 Downsizing. Unfortunately not here today. I know she's got some family matters in her life right now. I haven't been doing her justice over the last several months. I've been saying she's the one to go to deal with your stuff. She's actually a certified specialist in relocation, transition specialist. So she can help pack you up, get your house ready, move you over, set you up, and deal with your stuff. So also a great contact to have. What else have we got here? In terms of retirement living, what have we got here? Kim Rutledge, visitor near Oakville, a small kind of quaint residence in Oakville. We have Helen, I know, Helen, you told me your name, Hernandez from Chartwell in Oakville, also another retirement home in Oakville. And the third one, they're not here as well, from Parkland Ancaster, a new retirement environment where they carry independent living, full service and memory care, a whole gamut of retirement care options. And then lastly, towards end of life, we have Sarah Sachs from Smith's Funeral Home. Also, pretty much, I'm sure you know what they do. And new to our group, we have Kelly Stern, who is with Compassionate Care Collaborators. So they are death doulas and end-of-life care planning. So Kelly was at our session last month that we had on medical assistance in dying, and then reached out right away and said, we want to be part of this, so thanks, great to have you on board. Also want to just acknowledge the two ladies at the door and Lisa, our videographer here. They helped to get everybody organized, seated, and settled, and get the room set up, so thanks very much. I wouldn't be able to do it without you. And also just want to extend some, maybe, best wishes to Lisa. So you've probably seen Lisa hobbling around since she's been with us, but she's scheduled for knee surgery in a couple of weeks, so we wish you well, Lisa. We're not gonna see her in November, but hopefully you'll be back with us in December. Spry. Thank you. And just before we get started with the presentation, just wanted to remind you that please turn your cell phones off, just so we minimize the disruptions. You have some notepads and pens. Please hold your questions to the end. It'll be much easier for us to have a better conversation at the time of a questioning. I'll just run around with a microphone so that we can be sure that everybody hears. And you have your notepads. You got that there. Oh yes, sorry. And there's also evaluations on your chairs. I would appreciate if you just make sure that you fill those out and leave them for us at the end of the session. Later this month, we're going to be working through determining all the sessions for next year. This series is going to continue in 2025. It's not going to be just a repetition of what we've had this year or the year past, but we'll have new topics and very much depend on you to let us know what's important to you, that you'd like to hear about, and we're more than happy to provide those types of sessions for you. Okay. So our topic for today is condominium, what you need to know about condominiums and condominium living. And with us, we have Maria Durdan and Asad Hashim from Simpson Wigle. So I've known Maria for several years now. She was and still is the lawyer for the corporation condominium that I live in. And through that experience, I learned that she knows her stuff. She's the assistant managing partner at Simpson Wigle Law and the chair of Condominium Practice Group, practicing primarily condominium law, land development, and administration. She supports over 675 of the firm's residential, commercial, and mixed-use condominium corporation clients throughout Ontario. She's also obtained her Associate of Canadian Condominium Institute, which is a CCI designation in law, which recognizes that she's achieved a high level of knowledge and skill in condominium law. She's the president of the Canadian Condominium Institute, the Golden Horseshoe chapter, and co-chair committee of the Education Committee for CCI, and a member of the Association of Condominium Managers of Ontario. She frequently presents at seminars like ours, and we're grateful to have you here, and writes on condominium-focused topics for CCI and ACMO.
And also with her today is Asad. He's an associate at Simpson Wigle Law, focusing in areas of residential and commercial real estate, land development, and condominium law. Previously worked with small businesses on a variety of matters, including drafting governing agreements and advising on business matters. And he'll be working for builders, developers, business owners, and condominium boards. So we're in good hands here today, and I look forward to learning more as much as we can with our two guests. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Wonderful. Am I in the range of the video? Okay. Or something's going to be thrown at me. I was paying for parking when I was coming in because I thankfully did not forget. And the young gentleman in front of me was paying, and he turned around and he said, "I wish all these were the same." And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. There's taps, there's apps, there's credit cards, there's too many options. That's kind of what condos is. Everyone thinks a condo is a condo is a condo. It's not. It's so important to know what you're buying, or perhaps sometimes more importantly, what you're not buying. And if it suits your lifestyle, because it's a big change from freehold individual home ownership. You are now buying into community, whether you like it or not, you're part of it. You have to find a way to live in it happily, hopefully. So the purpose of today's presentation is to kind of give you a very general overview of what is condos, what are condos, what are the types of condos that are out there, what is condo living, what is not condo living, and maybe just to answer some questions you may have about condominiums and is this the right fit for you. Asad will go through the agenda and through our slides, and I'll jump in to kind of give some practical feedback and comments, and hopefully you can walk away with, I always say, at least one bit of information that's good. That means that we've done our job. So welcome.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you for having us here today. So my name is Asad Hashim, and we will begin with the presentation today. And so today, as Maria mentioned, we will be talking about all things condos. So this is what are condos, how they operate, who helps run, manage, administer things related to condos, how you can buy a condo, what things you need to consider when buying a condo. And hopefully at the end of it, you'll have a better understanding of what condos are, what they aren't, what you may own, what you may not own, and whether this is something that you want to consider down the road and into the future. So starting off, what is a condo? So typically with condos, you own a unit, and this will vary depending on the type of condo you purchase, and we'll talk about the different types of condos you can purchase. But typically, what most people consider condos is that you own a unit, and jointly with the rest of the community in your condo, you own an interest in the common elements. So the common elements could be the gym that's at the condo, the swimming pool, hallways, elevators. All of those things are jointly owned by all members that are within that condo community.
And just to clarify, what is a unit? Because some of you might be saying, that's great, I have a unit, what is that? In the traditional sense, if it's a townhouse, it would be your dwelling home. It could extend so far as your front, back, side yards. So your unit could be almost like a parcel of land. A unit in a high-rise is only the interior of your home, or interior of your unit. So again, a unit is not a unit, it's not a unit. You may think you're buying the entire piece of land, but you only own the dwelling home.
Thank you. And what's also important to remember with condos and within the units is that when you live in a house, in a neighborhood, you get some control over what you can do with your property. The town or the municipality or the city you live in may have things that they want you to do or things they may not allow you to do. But within condos, it's also what the condo allows, what their rules, what their governing documents, which we'll also talk about, what they may allow from renovations, from alterations to your unit, or just lifestyle-based things that the condo may or may not allow. And we'll talk about and give you some examples of what things that might be. So moving on to talking about the different types of condos. So a lot of people, when they think about condos, they think about these tall buildings where, they may be 20, 30 floors, and that's the typical perception that people have of condos. But there's actually a lot of different types of condos that are allowed, that are built around the province of Ontario and elsewhere as well. And the first one is a standard condo, and this is the one that a lot of people think about. It's the unit, which you may own, and we'll talk more about that, but it's also the common elements that is present within that condo. So again, your swimming pool, your barbecue area, patio area, stuff like that. The next type of condo is a common element condo, and what this is it's a parcel of tied land that the owner owns, and by virtue of owning that, you have ownership and interest in ownership over a common element. Sometimes that common element could be just the road, sometimes it might be a park, it could be a golf course, it could be whatever and however that condo was particularly set up. The other type of condos that do exist are vacant land condos, and this is an empty land that is sold to you, and the benefits of some people are interested in this is you can customize your home however you like, and your house may look how you want, but at the end of the day there may be certain common elements like roadways, parks or something like that that you also have common ownership in with the rest of the community that lives in this vacant land condo. There's also something called leasehold condos, and this is similar to renting property, where it's perhaps not a year-to-year basis, but it might be a 60, 50, or 90-year lease that you own, that you have possession of for that period of time, and you can do what you want with that property, at least what the condo permits you to do with that property, and making the alterations that you may have. And finally, there's also phased condos, and what this is typically like is there's a big piece of land that a developer owns, and they want to build multiple different types of condos, but they want people to start slowly moving in. So they may build a phase 1 and let people move in there. Then there's a phase 2 and then let people move in there. Then they'll build a phase 3 and let people move in there. And then all those 3 phases are typically combined into this one condominium, and there may be things that are shared within all 3 of those condos, or at least the condo building. So that could be your gym facilities are owned are used by all 3 phases that were developed, and it just increases the members in that community and increases how the community is run and the members that are part of that community.
So the first takeaway is this: if you're looking at purchasing a condo, find out what type it is. It sounds like a pretty obvious thing to say, but I've acted for purchasers where they thought they purchased the entire piece of land, including the dwelling home, but it was a standard condo, not a common element condo or a vacant land condo. So they only owned the dwelling home. So there's restrictions on what they could do in the front, back, side yards. So just be very clear about understanding what you're purchasing. The phased condo or the community condos is something that we see a lot of in Hamilton, in Burlington, in Oakville, and there are a lot of lifestyle condos. There's one in Hamilton that's called 20 Place, you may have heard of it. 20 condos in one. High-rise, mid-size, low-size townhouses. Runs as one almost gated community. Works well when it works well, but of course there's hiccups. There's also common areas like a community center that everyone in those condos has access to. Shared facility committees, so it's like a little town within a town. So there's a lot of really unique structures out there, but it's really important to understand specifically what you're buying into, because it does impact what you can and can't do in things like your yard.
And with the different types of condos, one thing that you've heard Maria or myself say often is this term common elements. And previously I described common elements being something like hallways, the elevators that are in the condo, the swimming pool, the library, the gym, the sauna, whatever amenities that may exist within the condo that you live in. And generally the common elements are owned and maintained and operated by the condo itself. Your common element fees, which is a membership due, if you will, that you pay to the condo to help run the condo itself, those are typically used to operate and maintain the common elements. So if the elevator is broken and you need the condo needs a repairman to come fix the elevator, then your condo fees or common element fees are used collectively to repair that. And unlike your unit, where you might be responsible to fix some things and not others, typically with a common element, it is the condo that fixes it and it maintains it. Unless you were the one that broke it, then they might come back to you and say you have to pay for it. But assuming you didn't break it, the condo is responsible for maintaining that and fixing whatever's broken or upgrading things within the common element. But with common elements, there's also what's often referred to as exclusive use common elements, and this can change depending on the condo you're in. So for instance, if you look at some of the high-rise buildings, they may have balconies, and those balconies they may be exclusive use common elements, they may be part of the unit. That is something that you would determine when you're going in to purchase a condo, and the lawyer could speak further to that. But what exclusive use common elements is, it's just like common elements where it may be the condo that's responsible for repairing, maintaining it, subject to any rules that are within the condo. But your exclusive use common elements are only typically for that unit owner. So if you live in unit 503 and you have a balcony, you're the only one that has access to that balcony. It'd be weird for your neighbor to come in and use it, so it kind of makes sense. But that's what exclusive use common elements is, and it can really vary depending on whether the exclusive use common elements are to be maintained by you or the condo and who pays to fix. And those are things that you may need to consider when you're going into purchasing a condo as well.
Hopefully you invite your neighbors over sometimes to use your balcony. It's not weird, but you never know. I do want to stress the importance of knowing if something's part of the common elements or part of the unit. It sounds, Maria, it doesn't matter. That's an issue down the road. It's not, because it's important for budgeting. To give an example, townhouses. Sometimes the whole unit has no upper limit. So it's all the way up to the sky to the stars. That means that the roof is part of your unit. I've had people move into corporations or condominiums and say, well, this is a condo, the condo pays for everything. Fun fact, you are the condo because you pay those fees through your common element fees that Asad was saying. But with respect to the roof, if it's part of the unit and it's your responsibility, regardless of the fact that you're in a row of townhouses, it's your cost. So it's very important to understand for budgeting purposes what the boundaries are and what the responsibilities are, because you don't want to get stuck thinking you're in a condo, free hassle living. Everyone assumes that. And then you're stuck having to repair a roof that you thought wasn't your direct responsibility. So just be aware of those costs which may compound and your responsibilities when you're buying into specifically a townhouse more than a high-rise.
And so we'll talk a little bit more about unit and common elements because, as Maria mentioned, it is very important for you to understand the difference between the two and what you may own and not own, and what you may be responsible for and not responsible for. And so what this chart shows is, first of all, it shows examples of your unit boundaries. So, and that is what is your unit. So that could be the floor, the ceiling if you live in an apartment style condo, the walls itself. It may not include the pipes that are behind the wall or the wiring itself, but again, that can change condo to condo and unit to unit, and that's something that you would need to review with your lawyer at the time of purchasing a condo itself. And what this also shows is who's responsible for what. So, and who owns what portion of it. So for the unit itself, it's typically the unit owner that would own it. And you would be responsible for maintaining it. You would be responsible for insuring it. If there's damage that you need to go to your insurance company, your condo is not using their insurance to pay for things within your unit or for any damages in your unit. Similarly, there's common elements. Like again, we've talked about with the elevators, hallways, there might be pipes that run between floors, between units, and those are typically owned by the condo. They're responsible for maintaining it, and they're responsible for repairing it. Again, unless you were deemed to have broken it, then that's a different story. Then you might be responsible, and you may need to work with your insurance company at that point. But this chart hopefully shows you the kind of the distinction between the two ideas here, between units and common elements, and what you could be responsible for, and what your condo could or should be responsible for. And it starts to form a picture in your mind of what and how condos operate. So this next slide shows you what the basic documents are in a condo. And why this is important is because these documents will help guide and show what you can do, what you cannot do, what you own, what you do not own, what you're responsible to maintain, what the condo is responsible to maintain. So the first document, and typically this is the hierarchy of these documents, the Condo Act is the act that's created by the provincial government, pursuant to which these condos exist. Then next you have the declaration, which is the constitution of the condo. And this really sets out everything from what you own, what you don't own, what might be included in common element fees, what may not be included in common element fees, and really just details every important and critical item that you think you may need to know about your condo. Following that, there's bylaws that may be passed by the condos itself, and that would address anything from how a board in a condo is elected and who is eligible to be on a condo board, to how common element fees can be collected, and if you don't pay your common element fees on time, what happens? What are the interest rates that are charged? And it just really details the little nitty-gritty items that you may want to know when you're owning a condo itself. The next document is also the rules, and this is really the document that may affect your day-to-day living. So it will tell you what the policy is if you want to rent out a party room, or when the gym hours might be, who can access it, how you access it. It could speak to garbage collection, pets, cars. If you own a car, you have to let the property manager know whether you have to register the car with the condo or not. Those rules are really the things that affect your day-to-day life. And so when you're going to buy a condo, you know yourself best, you know what lifestyle you're expecting when you're purchasing a condo. And these documents, again, the policies speak further to the rules. And these are the documents that are set out that help explain all of those things further, so you know how your lifestyle will be impacted and whether you're comfortable with that or not.
I perceive this group as being a very proactive group. If I could actually have purchasers or the current future owners of condos come to this kind of session before they buy, I feel like probably we might not have a job. Because so many things would be solved, because you would have an understanding of what you're purchasing. Oftentimes we ask for purchasers of condos and you get this big massive stack. Well, now you don't get paper anymore. Now it's just like a USB and they're like, here you go, just read it online, which I hate. So I print it and I have a stack like this big. And you're not gonna read it. That's the reality. What happens is you give it to your lawyer, and the lawyer reads it, and then they give you what they perceive to be important to you, which may not be what's important to you from your position, right? So if there's ever any document you're going to read, if you're going to not look at the declaration, which is the Constitution or the bylaws, look at the rules, like Asad said. This is your everyday living stuff. The other thing is, just because you lived in a condo before doesn't mean you know what you're living in now, because not every condo is the same. Just like there's different legal structures, phased, vacant, common element, there's very different rules that may apply to different condos. I hear, oh Maria, but the condo next door, they have like 3 dogs, so obviously we can have 3 dogs. No, in their rule, they don't have any rules about dogs, but your declaration says you can only have 1, or your rules say you can have none. So that's also a misconception that all condos have the same rules. They don't. So make sure you buy into the condo, again, that suits your life, that suits your needs. If you have pets, don't go into a pet-free condo. Because they're gonna have to mend a hole to allow that dog or cat or whatever it is. So just be aware of those kind of little things that can really blow up to be big things. We've had people buy condos with pets, they move in and they're told to get rid of them. Devastating. We've had people move into condos thinking it's pet-free, they have pets, devastating. So make sure you know what you're buying.
So rules, make sure you check them. That's the takeaway here. The next slide here speaks to how condos are managed. And this is important in terms of you having an understanding of what happens when a condo is managed. Who are the people involved in running a condominium? And the number one thing is you as owners are paying into the costs of running and operating the condo itself. So as owners, you have the responsibility to raise issues that you are seeing in the condo that you want the board or the property manager to address. You help elect the board of directors. In terms of determining the one of the other responsibilities is you're responsible for paying your common element fees. And these fees really help financially help the condo run. People have to be paid. When the elevator is broken, someone needs to pay the repairman to come and fix it. If there's a yard outside of the condo, someone needs to help come perhaps mow the lawn or shovel it. I mean, you probably don't want to be doing that, which is one of the reasons you're in a condo maybe. So paying into these common element fees is one of the other important responsibilities that you have as an owner. The next group of people that help run and manage a condo is the board of directors. Again, these are elected by you as owners, and they help manage the day-to-day for the condo. So if there's issues that owners are pointing out, like things are broken or there may be a security issue at the condo or something to that effect, then the board really works with the property manager at the condo to help determine what's the best way of solving these issues. The board of directors is also responsible for setting the budget. So your common element fees are really tied to what is the budget that the board of directors set. And the budget really comes down to what is the condo paying for, what do they have to pay for, what do they anticipate that needs to be paid for. And those are really the things that are used to figure out what your budget is, and from there you'll be able to know how much you're responsible for paying at the end of the day on a monthly basis for your common element fees. The other third group of people that really help run condos are employees and professionals. So these are typically people that are outside of the condo that the condo hires, and these are property managers who perhaps work on a day-to-day basis with the board of directors to figure out how to resolve issues, collect common element fees, and stuff of that nature. There may be engineers, and there will be engineers that are involved, because the engineers will look at the future outlook of the building or of the condo itself. What do they anticipate will need fixing in 3 years and 5 years down the road? For instance, the roof might need to be replaced in 5 years, and the board will want to know this so they can budget for that accordingly, so that they're not stuck with a bill 5 years down the road for a couple $1 million to fix the roof. The other important person that helps run the condos at the direction of the board is an auditor, and they look at the finances of the condo. Is money being spent where it should be? How is it being spent? And they will give an opinion on that on an annual basis to the owners itself. And those are things that you can look at to have an understanding of what is the future of this condo look like and what is the current position of the condo itself. So, like I said, that one of you have a role as an owner that you play in this condo. And you are a member of the community within the condo. You are responsible for raising issues. If you don't like something, the way something is done, that's an issue you can raise. If you have issues with things that are being broken, not being repaired or maintained by the condo, then those are things that you bring up to your board, to your property manager. You also have the ability to vote on some issues. Like I said, you as owners would be voting on electing the board of directors. There's some issues that you would be able to vote on and others that you may not be able to vote on. But ultimately, as owners, you have a voice in the community, and that is important in an attempt to try and live in a harmonious community environment. And as I mentioned, your other role as owners is to make sure that you're paying your common element fees, because those fees are things that, again, help condos pay for things, plant flowers so things look nice, shovel so there's no ice on the ground, mow the lawn, have a carpet vacuumed on however, twice a week or whatever the case may be. But if those condo fees aren't paid by the owners, then the condo has a hard time maintaining the condo itself.
So Asad was talking about community and involvement and owners having a say. Absolutely, you have a say because, like Asad said, you elect the board. Well, one of the difficulties I've noticed of people who move into condos is that they kind of do, they have control because as an owner, you've bought into the property, but you have maybe a lesser of a voice than you would in your own home. So one of the things I often see is that people saying, well, I did this in my house, we should do it like that here. Your neighbor may not think you have to mow the lawn every week, but you want to do it every other day. You may think the windows look fine, and then your neighbor thinks, well, we should replace half of them. And that does impact you financially if they are replaced. So that is all to say that when you live in a condo community, kind of the majority governs. The majority kind of pushes through projects or stops projects. And you have to be okay and willing to work like that, because if not, a lot of discourse can arise. Communication is key in condos. So as an owner, it is your responsibility to raise those issues and concerns you may have to the board, who is duly elected to represent your interests. But to a large degree, it's the board that makes those decisions and not individual owners. So that's something that you'll have to kind of put your mind to is that something you'd like to give up when you move from a freehold home where you decide when you replace your roof, how often you mow your lawn, do the windows need replacement? Or are you okay to kind of go with the collective and relying on other professionals like engineers and auditors and making decisions? Because it's a big shift, very big shift. And it's like a double-edged sword. Some love it because of that. They can kind of step back and someone steps in their shoes. And others like that control and aren't willing to give up. And that's the individual that makes it a bit harder for them to transition into what I call community living, because that's really what it is at the end of the day.
The next slide that we'll talk about is another important, very important thing to consider when you're purchasing a condo, and that's the financial status of the condo finances itself. And really the condo finances are broken down into 3 buckets, if you will. One is the common element fees that we've talked about previously. The other one is the reserve fund, and then there's special assessments. So common element fees are your typical monthly expenses that you would have to budget for when you buy a condo. What is important to understand with your common element fees is knowing what is covered and what is not covered. So for instance, you may have a condo where internet, cable TV, utilities, all of that is covered within one monthly fee, and it might be, I don't know, $1,000. Then you might have something where none of that is covered. Maybe it's just utilities that it's covered, but that condo only pays $500 for their monthly fees. So it's really important to understand what is the common element fee that you would be paying on a monthly basis, and what does it actually cover, so that you also need to know what services you might need to set up once you purchase and move into a condo. The next bucket of item is reserve funds. And what this is forecasting future capital projects that the condo might have to go through. So for instance, the AC system in the condo, there's probably a shelf life in that, and it has to be replaced at some point. Engineers and perhaps auditors would be involved in trying to determine what is the timeline, when do we anticipate the next time that the AC system needs to be replaced. Or perhaps the roof, maybe we went through a bunch of winters where there was a lot of snow and it compromised the roof a little bit. And an engineer might be able to speak to when the roof needs to be replaced or work needs to be done on the roof. And those things cost a lot of money. And when it does come time to do the repairs, the condo doesn't want to be stuck with a $2 million bill. They want to be able to plan for that. And so periodically they'll have engineers go in to figure out what does that replacement timeline look like. And what the reserve fund ends up looking like is the common element fees that you pay. Part of that will be used to put into this reserve fund so that can continue to grow, so that when it comes time to pay for one of those big expensive projects, there is money set aside for that. And the condo doesn't have to come to each and every owner saying, hey, we have this $2 million bill that's due next month, and now everyone is responsible for paying their portion of that. The reserve fund will help give you some financial certainty and not having to continue to experience increases in common element fees. The last bucket of item is the special assessment. And these are items that are unbudgeted items that the board did not account for, did not put into their budget, and it turns out that money needs to be spent for that. And the special assessment is on top of whatever your common element fees are. So if you're paying $1,000 for common element fees and it turns out there's this roof repair that needs to be done right away, there's no money in the reserve fund, and the work has to be done, but nothing was budgeted for in the annual budget for the condo, then they may come to each and every owner and say, hey, you're now responsible for paying your portion of whatever that bill is to repair the roof. And these are costs that you would want to understand prior to buying the condo and understanding what the financial status of the condo is, so that you're not continuously increasing some crazy spike in common element fees or a spike in special assessment or recurring special assessment as well. So now that we've talked about the outline of what a condo looks like, what your finances may look like with a condo, what you may own and not own, there's certain advantages and disadvantages that perhaps you're already thinking of if you were to purchase a condo. And some of those advantages look like, as Maria mentioned, community living. There's that social benefit of it, and if that's something you enjoy, then that's something that condos might be good for some types of people. Then there's access to different types of amenities. So if you're a pickleball person, if you're a tennis person, if you want access to a swimming pool, a sauna, then a condo might be useful because a condo may have those amenities available. There's also the different types of condos that we talked about, and your lifestyle can really dictate what type of condo you consider, what type of condo that you move into. And you also have typically future maintenance and repair responsibilities, because as we talked about, you may be only responsible for what is broken and needs to be repaired in your unit, but you're not technically responsible for the entire bill for the common elements that need to be replaced or repaired. Similarly, there's disadvantages to living in a condo. And no, that's not a typo. Community living is there again because, as Maria mentioned, it is majority rules. So if you don't want something done with the condo, but the majority of the people think that that's work that needs to be done, like windows need to be replaced and people are on board with that, you may have to just live with that decision, and it is what it is at that point. There's also the maintenance fees. That is in addition to all your other expenses that you would have to pay for your condo if you're getting a mortgage. This is expenses on top of that. There's also that risk of the special assessment if the condo hasn't kept a healthy reserve fund, or there's expenses that come up that the condo hasn't budgeted for that you will ultimately be responsible for if there's a special assessment. The other disadvantages, there are rules that you have to follow. If it was a standard freehold home that you own, you might be able to do what you want, but here there are rules. Is there a limitation on how many dogs or cats you can have? Is there a limitation on what you might be able to plant in your garden and what time you might be able to plant all that stuff? And ultimately, all of this leads to you having limited control over the decisions that you may want to make with your home that you do own. So the next slide shows you the process of purchasing a condo and things that you may need to consider. One of the big ones is lifestyle. Do the rules of a condo that you're looking at apply to the lifestyle that you want or the lifestyle that you envision when you're living in a condo? You also then have to consider your finances. There's the down payment, there's the mortgage, there is the condo fees. Is the condo going through or expecting a special assessment? And those are things that you will have to consider. You'll also then identify what type of condo. You work with a real estate broker perhaps, or some other professionals, and determine what type of property it is that you want to purchase. And things that you may need to consider there is the age of the building. The older the building, the more repair work that might need to be done and more frequently. And this will ultimately impact your finances through common element fees itself. The other aspects that you may also need to consider is the location. What's located, if you're in a high-rise condo building, for instance, like I live in a condo high-rise and there's commercial restaurants and stuff at the bottom level. Sometimes when their smoke alarm goes off, the fire alarm gets triggered in our building. That's just, and when that happens at midnight, that's not fun, but that's part of the sacrifices we make in living in a condo. So those are just things that you may need to consider when you're identifying a property. Then there's entering into an agreement of purchase and sale itself. And typically these will be conditional on perhaps inspection, the status certificate, which we will talk about because that is an important document. And it might be conditional on financing. Are you able to obtain the mortgage that you would like? And then finally, when you get to that point when you've identified the property, you've entered into the agreement of purchase and sale, you're getting to the point of closing on the property, you have to go through the work with your bank to get the money from that. You also have to obtain insurance to make sure that your contents are protected in case there is damage. So as we talked about, there's a status certificate that is an important document for any prospective purchaser to consider. And this is something that your lawyer will and could help you review at the time that you receive it. And what a status certificate does is it shows you a snapshot of where the condo is from a financial standpoint. It may show you agreements that have been entered into, that the condo has entered into that may have an impact on either the finances or what you are and are not able to do. It would also outline any significant expenditures or any kind of spending that the board of directors is considering. And those are typically outlined in the status certificate. The other thing that the status certificate does is, so it gives you the snapshot of the condo, but then also gives you a snapshot of the unit that you're considering buying. So it may show you whether that unit has been paying its common expenses or not. Because you don't want to purchase a unit in a condo, and then it turns out this person that owned it before you didn't pay their last 6 months. And then that becomes problematic for you. You don't want to be going through the issue of trying to clear that up. There may also be agreements that unit has entered into with the condo itself. So for instance, if you have a townhome style condo and there is a patio area where they've made some alterations or improvements, there is an agreement typically that's entered into. And you, as a new owner purchasing that unit, you are also assuming that agreement. And so you may want to make sure that what is it that agreement says and what are the things that you may have to do. Certainly if you have to deal with your insurance company and let them know this agreement might exist or not. The other part that is important to consider is the insurance aspect of it. So a lot of people say, well, the condo has insurance, so therefore I am protected as well. But the insurance doesn't apply, the condo's insurance doesn't apply to what's in your unit. the insurance that the condo has is for the common elements. So perhaps if there is some damage that happens to the swimming pool, then they may need to go to the insurance company to have that fixed. But the contents that are in your home, similar to renter's insurance, you need to have a policy for yourself to make sure you're protected in case there's damage. There's also often, many condos have this type of bylaw, and it's called the standard unit bylaw. And it might say what the standard is of that unit itself. So what type of countertops does it have? What kind of flooring does it have? What type of tiles in the bathroom it may have? Is there carpet on the floor in the basement or not? Those things are important to know, because if there's ever an instance where the condo has to pay you because they caused some kind of damage, they may only be paying up to what the standard unit bylaw says. And they may only be covering for those materials, not anything that's above and beyond that. So it's important to understand how insurance plays into all of this, and at the time of purchasing the unit, you may want to consider speaking with an insurance broker as well to make sure you're fully covered for your contents on that front. And finally, here's some questions that you may want to consider when you're going into purchasing a condo. What are you responsible for? Do the rules fit within your lifestyle of how you envision living in a condo? What amenities do you have access to? Can you access the pickleball court, or is that for the other building? What is the condo's current financial position, and what does the future look like for that condo as well? And what is the future outlook of that condo? From a financial standpoint, from a repair obligation standpoint, do they have important long-term fixing that they need to do with the condo? Because ultimately, once you buy into that condo, you're responsible for paying into having that fixed as well. And you want the answers to that sooner rather than later. And ideally, those questions aren't being answered after you've bought the condo itself.
Your story of the fire alarm reminds me of a story here in Burlington. And it was an individual that owned a unit just above a restaurant, like right above the restaurant. And their complaint was that they could smell food. And I'm like, okay. The restaurant was there when they purchased. It was operating, it wasn't new, it didn't change. So, you know. Ownership of any property, I'm sure Miriam will say, is an investment. It's expensive, it costs money. Regardless of whether you're in a condo, you're gonna likely have a mortgage. You're gonna pay taxes, you don't ever get away from those. You're gonna have to do repairs in a standalone home. You're gonna have to mow your lawn. There's all these responsibilities that are financial considerations. So finances aside, I would say, if I look at the global picture of do I make the move or not, or do I stay where I am, there's two. One is the lifestyle what you envision it? Really look at it and say, do I see myself in this community? Go there, walk around, and meet the people. And does the community suit your needs? And the second is, and this is a big one, are you okay with not always having that decision-making power? Because you're not going to have it in a condo. Maybe you'll sit on a board and be one of 3, 1 of 5, 1 of 7, but you won't have the control you have if it's just your home. And that's okay. 50% love that, 50% say, not for me. So just consider those two main things. Community, is it the one you want to see yourself in? And are you okay with maybe sitting back sometimes, still being involved as an owner, but knowing that what you want may not be what's ultimately decided. Clear as mud, right? My grading teacher used to say that. Would you like some questions now? Is that okay? Okay. Questions?
I'm going to start it off.
Sure.
So can you just address the benefits or the disadvantages of a low or a high condo fee? And you know that we've lived this myself.
Yeah, a low and a high condo fee. So well, first I'll say your condo fees are not based on the size of your unit. You know, often people say the penthouse should have the highest common element fee, and sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. It's really essentially an arbitrary decision. A high fee doesn't necessarily mean a negative. A low fee doesn't necessarily mean a positive. If a condo goes from high to low, run. That's not a good thing. Condo fees, like Asad said, they are used to operate your condo, your everyday maintenance issues, but also to fund your reserve fund expenditures. Sometimes a condo has high fees because owners don't want to be assessed, they don't want to pay that lump sum, or they don't want to obtain a loan. Sometimes they have low fees because the condo has done nothing. I spoke to an auditor once, and she said she was at a board meeting, and the board was so proud because they said, look, Alicia, her name is look at our reserve fund. We are fully funded. We are looking good. And then she looked and she goes, okay, yeah, but you've done nothing for 20 years. Nothing. The roof is coming up, the window is coming up, the garage is coming, like, come on. So you have to spend money. So, you get what you pay for, I guess, is part of it. So don't be scared if your fees are higher. Look at the whole picture. What has been done? What is scheduled to be done? If they're too low, that's also a red flag, I would suggest. So look at the entire picture and understand exactly where the money is going and where it's not going.
Thank you. Okay. Who's got some questions? We'll start at the front.
So I'm just wondering if a new board of directors is elected and I'm in a building because it allows dogs, allows animals. Now the new board, especially if the president is against the animals, they rule that you can't have animals. Can that be done if you went in under the guise that you could have animals?
So this is totally theoretical, right? Great question, because people think that condo documents are set in stone. They are not. They are not the 10 Commandments. They can be changed. So to prohibit pets, you should at least have that in a rule, ideally in your declaration. Remember the hierarchy, declaration, bylaws, rules? But to make that rule, they have to give you notice. So they have to send it out to owners, explain what the rule is, and also advise owners they have a right to call a meeting to vote against it. And if a majority of owners vote against it, it's done. So a board cannot arbitrarily pass a rule. They have to give you notice at the very least, and then you can call a meeting and vote against it. But just because your condo allows dogs today doesn't mean they will forever. And there's also the option of perhaps legacy and current owners saying, you moved in here before the rule, we'll allow you to have the dog. But there's no legal requirement to do that. So we said a couple times, communities are different. So you have to think about what works for the community. Maybe 10 years ago, a pet-free policy was good, pet-free rules were good. But maybe people are changing, the times are changing. Maybe it's time to change that rule. So they cannot just arbitrarily make those types of decisions.
But is that not in the declaration? That, like, if it's a pet-free building and then that can't be changed, or it takes a lot of work to get that changed?
The declaration can be changed as well. So that could, so depending on what documents we're talking about, the declaration being the supreme, and depending on the type of change, but if it's a dog, like let's say your declaration currently says no pets, nothing, not even a goldfish. If you want to allow pets, you have to amend it, which takes 80% of owners to consent to it. 80% of owners would have to consent to amend the declaration to allow pets. But it's possible, but it's an endeavor.
Okay, thanks. Okay, who's next?
We still live in our own house, and we have our furnace and air conditioner maintained once a year. When you move into a condominium, I don't think there's really air conditioners in each unit, central air, but a lot of units have furnaces. So if I move into a condominium that has a furnace, whose responsibility is to have that furnace checked before I go in?
So
And just one question, a bit more to that. When that furnace dies, because they are dying now really close to 15 years, whose responsibility is it to replace that?
I feel like these questions have been like planted because it's a really good one. That's, you know what I said earlier, you really have to review what you're buying, because, and typically you come up with that situation like in a townhouse complex, right? It really depends how your declaration, so your constitution, defines the boundaries, whether it's a unit or a common element, and then the responsibilities. Because if that furnace is within your unit,
Yeah.
but the declaration says that the unit does not include furnace, then it could be the corporation's responsibility. But it could also be a common element for which the owners are responsible for maintaining and repairing. So it's not a clear answer, it's 50-50. It really depends on how that component is defined and how the declaration stipulates is it owner or condo responsibility.
Because that unit may not have ever been checked.
May not have.
And I may not know that.
Yeah, it may not have. A common issue we have is fan coils. That's a big one because they start fires,
Yeah.
right? And typically fan coil components are located within the unit. And very seldom does the declaration say that fan coils are part of the common elements. So how does a condo require an owner to check their fan coil? Hopefully there's something in the declaration. But if there isn't, then there's a section in the Condo Act 117 which says essentially you can't let a dangerous or condition exist that could damage the property or injure persons. So if the condo has had instances, or perhaps there's a rise of fires because of fan coil maintenance or lack thereof, they could require them under that section. So there's tools, but again, it always comes down to, because even from a cost perspective, furnaces are not cheap.
Yeah.
They last for fewer years and are more expensive now. Really understand those major components. Are you responsible for it, or is your condo? Because that makes a big difference in budgeting. Like the roof is a real example. I've had people buy in a row of townhouses and think, well, this is a condo, I do nothing. A maintenance-free living, carefree. Well, not until that roof is leaking. That's your responsibility. So.
Just to add to that, so just from our practical experience, so some of the condos that I sell, the condo corporation does have a maintenance plan, so they send it to people annually to clean and check. And also, I was just sold a condo where they had a program where the building was aging, and so the condo went and got a group price, so everybody had the opportunity to change their heating unit if they chose.
So I live in a condo, I don't live in a condo, but if I lived in a condo and it said no pets, and I said, screw it, I'm gonna get a pet. And they said, hey, you can't paint your door pink. What are those kind of penalties, or how do they
So
come
what
out
happens?
with something? What happens to that
What
person that
happens?
owns the unit?
I feel like you're looking for a loophole here.
No.
So what happens? Well, first, it depends what the breach is. So let's say there's no pets and you bring in a pet, and let's assume this is not a human rights accommodation pet. Okay, so there's no emotional support, nothing, no physical, and it's just, I like dogs and this is a cute dog and I just want it. They could require you to remove it. They could deem it a nuisance or say it's in breach of the governing documents and require removal. And if you don't do it, then they'd have to go either to court or the condo authority tribunal to get an order for you to get rid of the dog. So they do have, and under the act, they're legally required to enforce the documents. So it's not optional. It's not like you get a dog, I don't like you, you don't get a dog. It has to be applied equally, and it has to be enforced. Because otherwise, I mean, what can you really rely on then? Yeah.
I have a weird question. Most of the condos that are being built now have retail space underneath. Who's responsible for that space if the lessor, is it lessor or lessee, vacates the building? Are the tenants responsible for that spacing?
So are you, okay, you're saying the owner of the unit ultimately
No, the whole
leaves it
thing,
up?
okay, all this retail space is underneath the units.
Right.
If the restaurant decides that they're leaving, that space is vacant, what happens with that money? Does the condo get that money? Are they responsible in any way?
So I'm not sure what money you're referring to, but those units, so there's usually two structures when it comes to industrial or commercial and residential on top. Let's say it's a tower, because I know you guys have a couple of those around here, right? Sometimes the bottom is actually a separate condo, and it's a condo on top of a condo, and they have reciprocal agreements. If it's one condo, regardless of the structure, someone owns that unit. An individual or a corporation or multiple parties own that unit. So regardless of whether that unit is occupied or not, whether that restaurant is there or not, the owner is still responsible for paying their common element fees. They have still responsibilities as any other regular owner. There's no money lost to the condo, whether it's leased or not leased. I'm not sure if you're talking about the lease proceeds. So the money that is paid by the company, by the restaurant, that has nothing to do with the condo, unless there's a contractual relationship, which rarely there is. Yeah.
Did a condo company or condominium complex make a law prohibiting a certain number of absentee landlords?
I get asked this a lot. So the question is, can a condo limit how many, are you saying how many units are rented? Is that clear? Is that accurate what you're saying? So no. A condo cannot put an upper or lower limit on the rental of units. To date, there's only two prohibitions you can do with respect to ownership in that way. The first is you can say you can limit short-term rentals. So we'll say rentals can be must be a minimum of 6 consecutive months, or a minimum of 12 consecutive months, and no subleasing, because we've seen that before. One master lease and then 10 leases for 2 months each, or less than that, I guess, 6. But so minimum rental periods you can require, and 2, the use. So many condos say only single-family use residence purposes. So that means you can't have multiple unrelated people living in a unit, i.e. students. But if it's just a large family, aunts, uncles, cousins, distant, whoever, they're allowed. But you can't say only 10 units can be leased. Not yet.
Okay, my friend has a condo in Calgary. She was living in it for a year, and then she gets a letter from the condo board saying, we need $30,000 from you because the garage needs to be rebuilt. There were some people that did not own a car at all. So they said, no, we're not paying. So it made my friend to use more money because of that.
So, I'm not familiar with the condo legislation in Calgary, but let's say the scenario happened here. And I've been asked this question, Maria, I don't use the pool. I'm not gonna pay to maintain it. I don't have a car. Why am I paying for EV installation? It doesn't matter. Remember when I say community living? You don't get to pick and choose what common element area you use or you don't use. Regardless of whether you use it or not, you pay for it. Which again, is also a benefit because you have more people contributing. So it really depends what side of the coin you're on.
So we had a similar example in our condominium where we were replacing the windows, and some owners were saying, well, your house has way more windows than my house. So we turned to Maria, and Maria said, sorry,
Yeah.
you're all paying the same.
Yeah, and like I said, it depends on which line you're on. It's a positive or it's a negative, right? Communal living.
Okay, we're just gonna go down. As legal representation for Ontario condominium law, what questions are typically the most common questions asked to you by condo boards?
Honestly, over the past couple of years, because I'm practicing for 15 years, so I'll focus on the last couple of years. The most common question, or two common issues in condos. One is harassment. That's on the rise. It's on the rise because people are living and working at home. And remember when I said you have to make sure you live in the community you want to live in and be okay with some things? You're going to hear your neighbor sometimes if you share a wall. They might mow their lawn a bit earlier than you do, and you're really close. So it's harassment's a big one, and just uncivil behavior. That's on the rise. People are going to condos that shouldn't be in condos. We still have mental health issues, and it's not a care facility. It is independent living still. That's important to keep in mind. It's independent living. The other one is reserve funds. So Asad was talking about reserve funds and saving for those major projects, parking, pool, underground garages. Oh, did you want a chair? Underground. And so these are major capital expenditures. And many corporations, even though they have saved for it, they follow the reserve fund studies because of cost of labor and cost of material, they are underfunded. So yeah, so the costs are going up higher, even though everything was done properly by the board. So the boards are getting removed because owners are challenging them on their decisions. So those are the two major things, is finances because of major capital projects and the costs of them. Like we're all seeing in our homes right now. I mean, thank God I did my fencing about 7 years ago pre-COVID, because right now I couldn't afford it. And the prices haven't gone down. So it's those things that are very, very big. Yes. Oh, here, there's.
I live in a townhouse.
Can you put the
condo.
mic to your mouth?
Sorry. I live in a townhouse condo. I've lived there for 32 years, and I recently thought that maybe I should have my furnace checked. Has that got anything to do with the condominium? I pay a huge fee every month.
Mm-hmm.
Has that anything to do with the condominium?
The first thing you should take a look at is your declaration. That's the first thing you need to read through and see if there's anything about it, and if it defines the boundaries. Because that's going to tell you if it's your responsibility or whether you're going to call your manager or whoever your representative is. That's number one. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I needed a crane, but I.
Okay, back to the animals.
Yes.
So I don't own a condo or anything, but when that man was speaking, if you moved in with an animal and the condo board allowed the animals, 10 years down the road, they change the law and they say no more animals. What happens to that person? They've already bought under the belief that they can have that pet.
Yeah, so I would suggest that a reasonable board, which is actually their duty of care, to act honestly and reasonably, would likely legacy that owner and say, this owner was here before the rule came in, the life of this pet can stay, but maybe the next pet shall not be. So reasonableness is important, and especially when it comes to rules, they have to be reasonable to be enforceable.
So when I bought a condo, the builder had deemed that it only needed a 3-member board, but now there are some owners who are saying we don't want a 3-member board, we want a 5-member board. How difficult is it to do that if it can be done at all? Or are we stuck with 3?
You're not stuck. There is a light. So your organizational bylaw, which is probably your bylaw number 1, is the one that says 3 directors. You just have to amend that bylaw. And to amend a bylaw, you need to draft an amending bylaw, send the notices to owners, and then at that meeting, a majority of all the owners in the condo have to approve it. Okay, so 51%, and as long as it's approved by the owners, you're good to go. Very common, actually it's a very common amendment. Yeah, no problem.
Hello, my question is about during the process of buying a condo, and when you said that USB stick comes with a lot of documents, and I guess my question is about the duty of the condo management to inform you of something, and what happens if that doesn't work. And again, I'm thinking there's an engineer's report, they don't give it to you, at the time you buy the condo, and 1 week later they say there's the $30,000 coming. You bought, but it was known. So I'm just wondering what is the duty to inform you before you buy?
Right. So Asad was talking about the status certificate. right? So I'm gonna assume it's a resale. It's not a disclosure statement, it's like a new build. So if it's a resale, because you have an engineer's report, so it sounds like it's been existing for a while. You have to request a status certificate, pay $100, and in that status certificate, it should list all the documentation. You can always request more. You can always ask questions as well. But if there's upcoming major work or major projects or a special assessment, it should be disclosed in the status certificate that are known. Because if it's not, then you as an owner, future owner, could take the position, I didn't know, I'm not responsible for paying it. It's not my obligation.
So I guess, but what he's asking is like, what if they get the status certificate, they sign off on the deal, and then in a month's time before closing, there's a new notice?
Well, you should be asking for 2 status certificates. You should be asking one for the time when you sign the deal and before closing, because you're right, something can happen between those 2 timeframes. I like to recommend management give an updated one just freely, because then you're avoiding those issues of like, well, I didn't know. It's better to deal with it up front, because then you can go to the seller and say, look, Bob or Mary, you should be responsible for this really, or let's split it. So you should be requesting 2 status certificates. That's a great point, Marion. At the time of signing and a day or 2 before closing, so you can make any adjustments that you may need to do and not be stuck with an assessment.
I was just wondering if you or Marion actually has a checklist that people can look at for the things they should be looking at in their declarations, such as furnace, air conditioner, coil. Do you have a list that could help people know what to look for?
I don't actually have a physical list, because it really comes when you sit with your legal counsel reviewing them. That's who you go through with it, right? And it would be sort of the determinative of each condo that you're buying, high-rise, low-rise, boundaries. But no, I don't, unfortunately, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's a lot of different factors to that. But here's the other thing I'll say, is that when you go get legal counsel, and this is not a plug for me because I don't do a lot of real estate, get a lawyer that does real estate. I know some people know friends or someone who did real estate on the side. Real estate is the most litigious area of law, because it's the area that gets missed in little areas because they don't know what they don't know. So get someone who specializes in the area. It really is, it's an investment on your end, and it probably costs the same as any other generalist as well.
I have a question. I'm not interested in buying a condo, but I am interested in renting. So what are the conditions for renters if they rent a condo? What protection is there like on your length of term and your monthly rental fee?
Right, so you would still be subject to the Landlord Tenancies Act. So with respect to monthly rental fees and whether they go up after a year or how much they can go up, that's outside of the condo world. But as a tenant, you should know you're also subject to the same rules, bylaws, and declaration provisions as an owner, right? But there's no protection through the condo as a tenant. That's something that the Landlord Tenant Act would govern. Okay? Oh, over here.
Okay, with the condo board, they put out a flyer saying, come to this meeting. Only 20 people out of 80 come. Is that 80, the people that are there, they voted on whatever thing that's happening. 80% of those people are, can do it? It has to be the whole condo.
The whole condo, yeah. Yeah.
It's going to actually comment back on the review specialist, the status certificate. So it's important, I'm glad that you're here, and if you're considering purchasing a condo, you're better equipped than most because you're now informed around what kind of questions to ask around the furnace and all of these things. Because typically the lawyers don't look at that. Am I right?
Oh, you're right, and it's unfortunate because I think there's always a lot of assumptions made. Well, they know this, they know where their parking unit is, but the parking unit is like on the other side of the development. So that's why I'm saying get someone who sits down with you and reviews these documents with you, and they say, what is your intention for this property? Are you going to rent it to multiple students? If you are, you can, because there's a prohibition.
Or a closer look at the financials.
Yeah.
Because I think, like, my experience is when people are purchasing condos and they get a report back from their lawyer, it's a checklist. Yeah, this, no pets, whatever. It's a very basic
Yeah.
report. So if you're looking for more and you need more, you need to be asking.
Yeah.
Is it not, when you're purchasing, I think a lot of it has to do with confidence in the real estate agent that you choose, and someone who is schooled on this, who does this, because they also they will have a lawyer that they will recommend to you, that they use on a regular basis. As in, you know, I mean, you could go online now and buy a house, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Give me shivers.
Yeah, it would give me shivers too.
Yeah.
You're putting your trust into that agent. That's what their specialty is, the area that they take care of, et cetera, and they know this lawyer and how this lawyer proceeds.
Yes.
I think that's a lot of it.
That's huge. That is such a gross understatement, because it's huge. It is huge.
Well, it's, from my experience, we've been in a condo for 15 years, and our real estate agent, that's what she did, that's what she handled. She knew the area, she was familiar with all of this, she knew the lawyer, et cetera, et cetera. You have to kind of put your trust into these people.
Absolutely, and it's because you hear the horror stories of the realtors selling what they thought was the entire parcel of land, and it was just the dwelling unit, and people thought they could put up fences, and they can't. They don't actually own it. Yes, absolutely. Every professional really that you get when you're purchasing property should be focused in that area. Realty, I said legal, they need to not just deal with these kind of one-off files. This needs to be what they do, because it's very specialized.
Yes.
Any other, Marie?
Thank you. One of you raised the scenario of perhaps an owner not paying their common element fee, their condo fees for several months, and the new owner comes in and learns of this. I'm not sure if that falls onto the new owner, but certainly it would impact the reserve fund. But in that scenario, for whatever reason, those common element fees weren't paid, and it's going to affect the reserve fund. What does the board do? I mean, let's say it went on for 6 months, impacting the whole community.
Yeah.
What steps, what legal steps would be undertaken to recover that lost revenue?
So under the Condominium Act, there's this great authority that says that you can lien an owner's unit. And so what that means is that from the date the chargeback arises, or the fee arises, the common element fee is due and payable on May 1st, let's say, but the owner doesn't pay, you have 90 days, so 3 months, to register a lien. And then within that 3 months, you have to give some notice. Usually within that 3 months, you try to work with the owner. Things happen, life happens. But by that 90th day, you want to make sure you secure your lien right by registering it. Because if you don't, so let's say it goes on for 6 months, your recourse is small claims court, which isn't great. Because even though they haven't paid for 6 months, it's not a huge amount in the big scheme of things. But the condo's going to have to pay to go to small claims to get it back, which they'll probably have to incur legal fees to do that, which may actually not turn out to be a win. So the long story of the short of the long story is make sure you're leaning within 90 days and trying to work with the owner. Don't let it go beyond 3 months arrears, otherwise you're stuck to small claims at that point.
So just to follow up, if I were to purchase that unit,
I would want to know that information.
Right, and that's on the status certificate.
That's on the status.
Correct. The status certificate has a section in it that says if there are any outstanding common element fees that were charged back. So this would be they haven't paid their monthly fee, maybe they haven't paid their special assessment, maybe their dog soiled the carpet, the condo repaired it and charged back the repair costs. So any of those should be on the status.
So that would impact my decision whether to purchase or not.
Well, most times it won't impact you whether you buy or not, but you'll have an abatement or a decrease in the purchase price. Because you're going to want to make sure that the seller says, all right, this is my fault. I'm going to pay the $2,000 and then we're good. So it's something you would ask to be done before closing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But you also do have the choice of not purchasing.
Yes, you have the choice, but if it's something, I would say that's a small issue in the big things.
What recourse do you have if you can't get a response or reaction, advice, any answer from a property manager concerning maintenance or any other issue with your condo situation?
Yeah, so the question is what can you do if management isn't responding? Who knows why they're not responding? You can try to reach out to the board. Of course, try to reach out to the entire board, not just individual directors because they act in quorum. But if you're still trying, the board is ignoring you, management is ignoring you. The managers are now governed by the CMRAO. I'll say that one more time. CMRAO. Condominium Management Regulatory Authority of Ontario. They weren't governed before. The running joke was that you couldn't sell hot dogs downtown Toronto without a license, but you could manage a multi-million-dollar building, right? Crazy. So now they're licensed since 2016. That's who you would want to be contacting and saying that you're an owner and no one's responding.
One last question.
Typical condominium. Okay, who owns it? Who actually owns the building, the property? Is it the individuals that buy the units? Like the developer builds it?
Yeah.
He sells it to the individuals. They sell out, he gets his money. Does he still have an interest in that?
Unless the developer owns units, once he or she has sold all their units, they're out, they're gone. But they could own some units.
Okay,
but if they sell all their units,
more than the people that are in there.
yeah. So so owners own their units, and then they have an percentage interest in the common elements. So the common elements are owned by everyone together. That's why if you want to sell your park, which is a common element, they all have to sign the deed. Yeah. But the developer is out of the picture.
Yeah. It's not even part of it.
No, he's out.
We're at 3 o'clock, but we're going to take one more question.
Thank you for coming. What's in place for unoccupied units? So in other words, people will buy it, they never live there, and there's leak after leak after flood after flood.
So what about unoccupied units? So some corporations' governing documents require that they have to come minimally maybe once or twice a month, or at least advise their insurer that they're not there, and then their insurance is higher in the event of any loss. But typically, so long as the common element fees are paid, they can stay vacant. But if damage is occurring because things keep failing in the unit, then hopefully the corporation can charge back those costs to the unit.
They do, but then the person living below that.
Yeah.
So are there not some restrictions on how long a unit can be vacant in terms of insurance coverage?
From insurance, yes, but not from the corporation's perspective, yeah.
Yeah, so the insurance.
So they say they'll show up once a month, but they don't, and there's nothing we can do for it.
So, okay, so we need to move on. It's 3 o'clock. Thank you very much, Maria and Asad, for your presentation. So just to note, this is being recorded and it will be posted on the website, on the Senior Speaker Series website, but also I will email you a link
to that, so you'll have that information, as are all the past sessions, and also some other resources that are there. Maria and I'm not going to verify out if there are no other calls, but thank you so very much. And once again, just to acknowledge and thank our educational partners, please do use their service or no use of what they have to offer. And the next session is on Wednesday, November the 13th, and it's on the continuation of this conversation around downsizing and perceptions around that. The presentation is going to be by me and